Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're covering Chapter 4, Layout and Containers in Adaptive Cards. In this chapter, we'll be exploring four important topics: card root elements, type, version, body, and actions. Using containers and columns for organizing content, spacing, padding, and separators for better visual design. Responsive layout basics to make your cards look great on any device. So let's dive right into our first topic. Before starting, it's important to understand the basic structure of a card. There are four bare minimum elements of every adaptive card, and these are type, version, body, and actions. Now let's break down each of these four essential elements. Now let's look closer at the type property. The purpose of the type property is to identify this JSON object as an adaptive card. Its value is always set to adaptive card. Why does this matter? When a host application like Microsoft Teams, Outlook, or a custom app receives JSON data, it needs to know what kind of data it's dealing with. The type property acts as an identifier that tells the application, this is an adaptive card, render it accordingly. Here's a simple example: how we are defining the type. Important note, this value is case sensitive and must always be exactly adaptive card. Writing it as adaptive card or adaptive_card will cause errors and your card won't render. So always remember, exact spelling, exact capitalization. Next, let's talk about the version property. The version property specifies which version of the adaptive card schema your card uses. It's written as a string in the format major, minor, like 1.0, 1.2, or 1.5. Why does this matter? Adaptive cards have evolved over time, with new features added in each version. The version property ensures backward compatibility and tells the renderer which features are available in this card. Let's look at some common versions. 1.0, the original release from July 2017. 1.2, added media elements and toggle visibility actions. 1.3, introduced container bleed and RTL support. 1.5, added compound buttons and table elements. This is the latest as of 2024. In practical consideration, always check what version your target platform supports. For example, if you're building for Microsoft Teams, verify which schema version the Teams client supports. Using features from version 1.5 on a platform that only supports 1.2 will cause those features to not render or display fallback content. Now let's move to the body property. The body property contains the main content of your card, all the visual elements users will see. This includes things like text blocks, containers, input text fields, action buttons, and more. Don't worry, we'll discuss these elements in detail later. The value of body is an array of card elements, so it can hold text blocks, images, containers, and many other components. Why does this matter? The body is where your card's content actually lives. Everything from text and images to input fields and structured layouts goes inside the body array. Think of the body as the canvas where you paint your card's visual experience. Without elements in the body, your card would be completely empty, just a blank space. So whenever you're building a card and want to add visible content, you'll be working with the body property. Finally, let's cover the actions property. The actions property defines interactive buttons that appear at the bottom of your card. It's an array of action objects. Why does this matter? Actions provide interactivity. They allow users to submit data, open URLs, show additional cards, or trigger custom behaviors in your application. Let me walk you through the 5 main types of actions. 1. Action. Submit. This submits data back to your application. Use this when you want to collect input from the card and send it to your backend for processing. For example, a submit button on a form. 2. Action. Open URL. This opens a URL in the browser. It's perfect for directing users to external resources or documentation, like a Learn More button. 3. Action. Show card. This displays another card inline. It's useful for progressive disclosure, showing additional information only when the user requests it. Think of it like expanding a section to reveal more details. 4. Action. Toggle visibility. This shows or hides elements on your card. It allows you to create collapsible sections, making your card cleaner and more organized. 5. Action. Execute, available from version 1.4 and up, this triggers custom actions. It's similar to Submit but designed for universal actions that work across different platforms. Each action type serves a specific purpose, so choose the one that matches your interaction needs. Now we're going to study in detail about containers and columns. Containers and columns are the building blocks for creating sophisticated layouts in adaptive cards. They allow you to organize content, create visual hierarchy, and build responsive designs. Let's start with containers. What are containers? A container is a layout element that groups related items together. Think of it as a box that can hold other card elements. Why use containers? There are 4 main reasons: organization, group related content logically. Styling, apply styling to a group of elements at once. Visual separation, create distinct sections in your card. Control spacing, manage spacing between groups of elements. Now let's explore the key properties that control how containers behave and appear. Items property. This is required and contains an array of elements to display inside the container. Everything visible in your container goes here. Style property. This applies a background color to the container, helping create visual distinction. The available styles are default, no background, completely transparent, emphasis, a subtle background, usually light gray, good, positive or success background, usually light green, attention, warning background, usually light yellow, warning, alert background, usually light orange, accent, brand color background that depends on the host application. Bleed property, available from version 1.2 and up. This determines whether the container's background extends to the edge of the card or parent container. False, default, background stays within padding boundaries. True, background extends all the way to the edges. Spacing and separator, these control how containers relate to surrounding elements. The spacing property controls the amount of space before this container. Values include none, small, default, medium, large, extra large, and padding. The separator property adds a horizontal line above the container. It's simply true or false. Select action property. This makes the entire container clickable. Great for creating card sections that act as buttons. Minimum height property. This sets a minimum height for the container, ensuring it doesn't collapse too small even with little content. Moving forward from containers, let's explore another important property of adaptive cards: columns and column sets. What are columns and column sets? While containers stack elements vertically, one below the other, column sets give you the ability to create horizontal layouts. This means you can place multiple columns side by side within your adaptive card. Here's the key concept. A column set is a container that holds multiple column elements. Each column acts like its own mini-container, where you can add items just like you would in a regular container. Let me show you a simple column set structure. First, you define the type as column set. Then, inside the columns array, you add individual column objects. Each column has a type property set to column, and an items array where you can place your content elements. In this example, we have a column set containing 2 columns. Each column has its own items array, ready to hold text blocks, images, or any other adaptive card elements. Now, column sets have several properties that control their behavior. The good news is, we've already learned about these properties when we covered containers. Properties like width, items, spacing and separator, select action, and vertical content alignment work exactly the same way in column sets as they do in containers. Now let's talk about nesting containers and columns. One of the most powerful features of adaptive cards is the ability to nest elements inside each other. You can place containers within columns and columns within containers. This flexibility allows you to create complex and sophisticated layouts for your cards. Let's look at our first example, placing a container inside a column. Here, we start with an adaptive card that has a column set in its body. Inside the column set, we have a column with its width set to stretch. Now, within this column's items array, we place a container. This container can then hold its own items, giving you a nested structure. This approach is useful when you want to organize content horizontally using columns, but within each column, you need the additional styling and grouping capabilities that a container provides. Now, let's reverse the structure with our second example, placing column sets inside a container. In this case, our adaptive card body starts with a container. Inside the container's items array, we add a column set. This column set then contains individual columns, each with their own items. This pattern is helpful when you want to use a container to group related content with specific styling or background, and within that container, you need a horizontal layout using columns. By combining containers and columns through nesting, you can build virtually any layout you need. Whether it's a simple two-column design or a complex multi-level structure, nesting gives you complete control over how your adaptive card content is organized and displayed. Now, let's discuss troubleshooting common layout issues. When working with adaptive cards, you might encounter some layout challenges. Don't worry, these are common issues, and they all have straightforward solutions. We're going to cover 5 typical problems you might face and how to fix them. Issue 1. Columns not aligning properly. The problem here is that text or content in different columns doesn't align horizontally. It looks messy and unprofessional. The solution is simple. Use the vertical content alignment property. In this example, we have a column set with 2 columns. By setting vertical content alignment to center in both columns, the content will align perfectly in the middle, creating a clean, professional look. Issue 2. Container background not extending to edges. Sometimes you'll notice that your container background has unwanted padding around it, creating gaps at the edges. The fix? Use the bleed property and set it to true. Here, we have a container with an emphasis style. By adding bleed true, the background color will extend all the way to the edges of the card, eliminating those unwanted gaps. Issue 3. Too much or too little space between elements. This issue occurs when elements feel either too cramped together or too spread out. The solution is to use consistent spacing values throughout your card. In this example, we're adding a spacing property to a text block and setting it to medium. You can also use values like small, large, or other available options to control the space between elements precisely. Issue 4. Columns breaking unexpectedly on desktop. Here's a frustrating one. Your columns stack vertically even on wide desktop screens, when you expected them to stay side by side. The problem is usually with your column widths. If you're using pixel values that are too large, the columns won't fit horizontally. Instead of using a fixed width like 800 pixels, which might be too wide, use stretch or appropriate proportional values. This ensures your columns adapt properly to different screen sizes. Issue 5. Content overflowing container. The last common issue is when text or images extend beyond the container boundaries, breaking your layout. For text content, the solution is to enable wrapping. Add the wrap property and set it to true. This allows long text to wrap to the next line instead of overflowing. For images, ensure proper sizing by setting the size property to stretch. This constrains the image to the container width, preventing it from overflowing. Let's quickly summarize what we covered in this chapter. We explored card root elements, the type property that identifies your JSON as an adaptive card, the version for schema compatibility, the body that contains all visible content, and actions for interactive buttons. We learned about containers, how they group related content, apply styling, control backgrounds with bleed, enable clickable sections with select action, and create visual separation. And finally, columns, creating horizontal layouts with column sets, using flexible width options, controlling vertical alignment, and supporting responsive behavior on mobile devices. If you found this video helpful, please click the subscribe button, like, and share. Thanks for watching. We'll meet in the next video.